We're here today to share a platform we've been developing for a while now here at Core Studio called Ellipse. It's a data-oriented dashboarding platform on the web. And we're gonna kind of show some of the features of the platform, make sure you guys feel comfortable using it, and run through some Grasshopper demos to get data into it. For the Grasshopper work, these are some of the prerequisites. The plugins should automatically install with the package manager, so you don't have to run to Food for Rhino and download those if you don't have them. And we'll also do a quick demo of our Revit exporter, and you can follow along with that optionally if you have Revit. We have a Google Drive with example files today, and this slideshow. This link doesn't work. We found we need only the long link works, so that's in the chat. If that doesn't work for you guys, please let us know, and we'll make sure to upload the files and get them to you some way. Google Drive is not working for us. Sophie and I will be running this workshop. My name is Nico Zell. I'm a urban designer and software developer here at Thornton Tomasetti. My background is in urban design and planning and computational design. So I've practiced in a kind of wide range of project contexts, from community planning to public parks, looking at infrastructure. And I spend a lot of my time right now developing Ellipse and doing simulation for stormwater and transit and other urban scale issues with Thornton Tomasetti. And I'm joined by Sophie today.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sophie. I also work at Core as an engineer. My background is in structural engineering, and I also have experience as a facade engineer as well.
Yeah, great. And to get started, you know, we don't want to take up a bunch of time with this, but we'd love to hear from everyone on the call, and maybe just really briefly, if you'd be able to share your name and a little bit about yourself, maybe what you do professionally, how often you work with data-rich content that might be applicable to Ellipse. So let's see, so why don't we start with Yorgos? You're at the top of my screen.
Yes. Yes, hi everyone. I'm Georgios. I'm also Core Studio based in London. My background is in architecture. I also have a master's degree in urban design and a PhD in graphic statics, structural design. In case, I'm also here to make sure Nico and Sophie have everything they need. So feel free to drop a message in the chat or the Slack, and I'll be keeping an eye to make sure everything runs smoothly. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe, can you guys see my image grid? Is that shared with you? No? All right, let's go to Nut.
Hi, my name is Knut Tjensvold. Yeah, it was a good try. I've heard that one before. It's okay. I'm from Rural Haskoning. DHV is a large engineering consultancy in the Netherlands. I have a background in structural engineering, but I've been working as an application developer for a few years now. So yeah, just developing tools for engineers. So I don't work so much personally with data-rich models and drawings, but I help other engineers with their work that uses that. So that's why we're interested in Ellipse as well.
Great. Okay, and let's pass it to Edvika. everyone's name. I'm gonna
I
get
guess-
so wrong. I'm so
I guess
sorry.
that's me. Don't worry. So it's Evdokia. So hi, I'm Evie. It's easier, I know, for everyone to say it. I'm working at TT as well. I'm in the sustainability department. I work as a building carbon specialist. My background is architecture and sustainability. I did my master's in sustainability. I quite recently joined TT, and I know that here we work a lot with data-rich models and drawings and everything. And I joined today's meeting because I would like to work more like with you guys as well in core and like develop nice stuff and like help each other.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to Peter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Zhang. I have a background in architecture. I work at Corgan, is full service architecture firm based in Texas, but we practice internationally. And my usual responsibility is a blend of computational design, software development, and also IT. I'm based in the New York office in Midtown, situated in Empire State. And as for the model, I would say I work with data-rich model on a pretty frequent basis. If we count in, I guess if you count Revit itself as sort of a database that you can manipulate and interact with.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Quark. Quo.
Hi guys. Well, hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Quark. I'm currently at KPF, in the New York office. I'm doing computational design for the environmental performance here. And I'm not necessarily work with very often with data rich model, but I would love to learn more about it. Yeah.
Cool. Aaron, also from KPF.
I was going to say, yeah, hi, I'm Erin. I work with Quack on the environmental performance team at KPF. I have a background in architecture and high performance buildings. So I'm working with a lot of simulations and presenting that data to like internally and externally.
Great. It's great to have you guys. Both me and Sophie put in some time with the urban interface team. So I think
Yes.
we had a little bit of overlap. Great to see you guys here. Okay, Shigemura.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Tamaho Shigemura. I'm running my computation design and environmental design office in Tokyo, Japan. So right now it's 3 a.m. in Tokyo. So I will try to wake up. I will try to wake up. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we appreciate making the effort for this one. Matthew.
Sure. So my name is Matthew Brow. I'm a design computation specialist at Buyer Blinder Bell. We're actually right upstairs from TT at 120 Broadway. And I would say that we work with data-rich models and drawings pretty often. One of the reasons why I'm interested in this course is that we've sort of looked at a number of possible solutions for storing models with data, the least sophisticated, which is Power BI, and then of course all these different platforms. So Ellipse seems like it could really solve a problem that we're trying to solve.
Cool. Yeah. Let's pass it to David.
Okay, so good afternoon. My name is David Ruiz. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm working at McNamara Salvia in Miami. I'm currently working as a software developer here at McNamara Salvia. And similar to what others have described, I don't directly work with the data-rich models, but the engineers and the modelers at our office do for sure. And we support all of their work with applications and automations. So this seems as an interesting solution that might help us as well.
Great. We hope so. All right, and last but not least, JY Liu.
Hi, everyone. I don't know why my name showed up like that, but I'm Jacqueline. I work at TT on the same team as Evie in sustainability. I'm on the building analytics side, so looking at daylight and energy modeling a lot. And with that, we use Thread a lot of the times for like the data processing for parametric stuff. So yeah, excited to hear more about Ellipse.
All right. Well, I wish we had a environmental analysis example today. We don't, but Ellipse is very well suited for all the environmental analysis participants. It seems like there's a little bit of a critical mass with that subject matter. And then for anyone that's touching Revit and doing structural analysis, you know, we definitely count that as data-rich models. And we have some structural examples that really show off how Ellipse can help just navigate the incredibly large amount of numbers you're considering and doing some quality control and stuff on that. Okay, so let's jump into kind of an intro to Ellipse. Today, the agenda is to do a PowerPoint and interact, like go through the notebooks, just get you familiar with what Ellipse is and the key vocabulary through the intro and the example notebooks. And we're going to do a really fast Revit export example and then go through 2 Grasshopper exporting examples. And so we're hoping to spend about an hour in the first chunk and then the next 2 hours on the exporting Grasshopper stuff. So what is Ellipse? Ellipse is a flexible online dashboard. And some of the key features is that it allows for collaboration and sharing of models and data in a really approachable online interface, and it allows for commenting and kind of shared interaction and shared exploration of your design models. It's very customizable, and you configure layouts through a series of widgets, and these widgets give you the ability to explore your models, your drawings, and just raw data sets all in one place and in an interconnected way. And that interconnection, we think, is one of the more powerful and innovative aspects of this platform compared to some of the work we've done in the past. If you're familiar with things like Design Explorer and Thread that Core Studio has published in the past, this is kind of our next iteration of that, and we're working towards getting full parity of any functionality from those earlier platforms into Ellipse, and the bulk of that has made its way in. So let's just take a quick look at the website and what an Ellipse notebook looks like. So here we have a layout where we've uploaded a parametric tower. We're going to go through the example to generate this tower today, so you guys will all be able to play with this and generate your own layouts. We've got a 3D viewer here in the middle, and we've got a 2D viewer on the right, and you can see that the data is linked. So if I select a floor plate in the drawings, it's aware of which floor plate that is in the model. We've got the ability to filter things down based on certain data attributes like the floor plate area, or color by different attributes, and have some charting. So this is the basic concept of Ellipse, and we're trying to design a really flexible way to configure these spaces. So that's kind of the core concept. All of your data in one place in a flexible way that makes it easy to present and share and comment, and drill down and ask questions of all the information you're generating while you design. And we're going to step back into the PowerPoint and kind of just look at some of the key vocabulary that compose these notebooks and how you interact with it, because there are a lot of little sub-menus and tabs and modes for interacting with Ellipse, and doesn't think I own this. I'm not seeing my little edit button down here.
You're in a visitor.
I'm a visitor. So things like that, what your permissions are, how you can edit, all that, we're going to break down through this PowerPoint, and then jump into some example notebooks. So I'll present. See it?
Maybe at the top, yeah.
No,
Oh, not
no.
that one. The slideshow to the right.
Yeah, right there. Okay. So Ellipse organizes all of its content into notebooks. So when you first sign up and log in, you'll be presented with your notebooks dashboard. And notebooks are self-contained spaces where you upload a collection of data to and lay out multiple pages, and can have discrete share settings. So the notebook is kind of like a project or a repository, and they don't share information and settings between notebooks. So generally you're using that to organize a specific kind of content or thematic group with a specific set of people. And when you open a notebook, there are two main parts to the notebook. There's the main dashboarding space that hosts all the widgets and creates your layouts and interaction. And then there's a side panel for persistent functions and notebook management, things that are always there. And you can add comments and add pages, but you're never editing the fact that there's a pages section. Like there's always going to be pages, comments, and attachments available. So the panel is persistent but collapsible. The main dashboard is where all the layouts happen, and then there is some quick navigation that will show up in the top bar, and edit mode button. And there are two modes in Ellipse. There's before I talk about the modes, I'll talk quickly about pages. So a notebook can have many pages and it can nest them. So here we see we've got a facades type parent page, and then a bunch of sub facade detail pages. And so these sub pages will show up as a drop down in the quick navigation. And pages are a great way to maybe look at the same data set from a different angle, or compose different sets of widgets, or maybe you need a whole dashboard of specific widgets to look at one sheet, but you have 20 sheets. Maybe you make 20 pages, one per sheet, so that you can add certain specific notes and so forth. So a notebook is a set of pages. A page basically just represents one dashboard layout. So when you share a notebook with someone in a public link, like the ones we'll be sending you guys, they'll be brought to view mode. And this is where you can interact with the dashboard and ask questions of the data, but nothing's being saved. It's not permanent modifications to the layout. And this is the space for running the meeting out of, placing your comments, interacting with the notebook. This happens in view mode. When you switch through the little pen icon, if you have permission to edit a notebook, you go into edit mode, which is indicated by kind of a color shift to orange. And the side panel will now have a set of tabs geared towards uploading and managing data, adding and removing widgets, controlling widget settings, and you can reconfigure your dashboard. You can delete widgets, add new ones, and set everything up. If you want to start interacting with that, layout you've created in edit mode, you need to switch back to view mode. And so it's important to keep track of which one you're in. If you're looking for your dataset upload button when you're in view mode, it's not going to be there. When you put a widget onto the dashboard, it has widget specific settings. So if you select a widget, which is indicated by the outline, you'll find on the side a settings tab. And so here we're looking at the 3D viewer settings. So the 3D viewer widget has its own specific set of settings that are going to be different from, say, a color by widget or a filtering widget. So do you want a ground plane or not? Do you want a sky? What angle is the sun at? Are you going to cast shadows in that model? Those are the kinds of settings. And then for viewers like 3D models, you can also pick which, say you uploaded 10 models, you can choose which models are available in that specific viewer. Because maybe you don't want every page to show every single model. You want a page to only show one model, or one viewer to show 2 specific models tied to the theme of that page. There's a models tab up there as well. So we have a lot of different kinds of widgets. The main types are static user widgets. These are like static images that you upload, rich text when you want to write some narrative. We've got display widgets, which are all our viewers, our tabular data viewers, our 3D viewer, 2D viewer, maps. We've got user interaction UI widgets, which do filtering and coloring and sorting of the data, searching. There's charts, which is basic, pretty self-explanatory. And then we have a feedback section, and this is telling you about maybe the item you currently have selected, or doing some summary statistics on specific attributes in your data set. So if we look at some examples of those, just some rich text, adding a title, that would be a user widget. The 3D viewer is a display. The donut chart is obviously a chart. User interaction is like setting the color to by program. And we see that's getting applied to our viewer and our chart here. And also a filter. So maybe we want to only look at certain program types. And then feedback, it's telling us how many items we maybe filtered out of our view, and the sum of floor area by program in our counter widget. When you create an empty notebook, you'll be prompted to upload data. We call them assets. And you can drag and drop or browse to fill this up. You can always upload data later. You don't have to do it right when you start. Maybe you want to create a layout and then go back to Rhino, create your data, upload it. You always have access to this asset section through the edit mode. When you add a bunch of bulk data to the uploader, it will automatically sort your files based on their file extensions into our different data types. And you have a chance to review and modify this. 3D files, we only accept 3DM right now. You need to specify this file type if you want to see it in a viewer. The same goes for 2D, GIS, and images. These are for interactive viewers where your 2D drawing has IDs embedded in it to interact with your data set. For data sets, we accept JSON and CSV. And this is the glue that helps all the widgets communicate with one another. Images are for our image grid. So if you have a big design space, and we'll take a look at this at the end of the workshop, you want to use image. And then files are for any general attachments, things that aren't going to be interacted with. So maybe one of these models is just something you want to download. It's not something you want to preview. You might manually switch that from 3D to file. Or maybe you have some images that you want to put in an image carousel. That would become a file. So once you've uploaded the data, you can manage the data at a page level in this section. You can set which data set is active for the page. You can only have one data set per page right now. We're looking to maybe make that widget specific in the future. and you can set which models are exposed to that page. So I uploaded 4 models, but I only want 3 of them to be visible on this page. So you would unclick one, and then files. Here's like just a simple PNG that I might want to put in a, maybe it's a rendering that I want to put in a static image. We have a commenting system on the left in view mode. So when you add a comment, you can tag other people, and it will show up in their feed when they log into Ellipse. And you can pin comments to specific elements in drawings or models. So if Sophie tagged me in a comment and I want to see, oh, what element is she talking about, I can use that comment to then zoom in on maybe a specific detail, and she can also attach files. So maybe she attaches a screen capture of the AutoCAD detail she's working on in conjunction with that comment. And then lastly, we have a layout system where you can save your collection of widgets in a layout and reapply layouts to pages. So maybe you've got 6 different favorite ways of kind of looking and filtering your data. You can save that generically as a layout and reapply it. The important thing about the layouts to know is that when you save the layout, it scrubs all the widget settings and page data out of the layout. So it's just which widgets are where on the canvas. You'll have to go back in and reset, like this is measuring area and this is measuring length, but the layout just knows that it's a range slider, a filtering slider. So you will have to kind of go back into that widget settings and apply them to whatever data is in the new page you're applying it to. We have all our documentation on Gitbook. And just to a link here, just to drop that in the chat. The Gitbook has some documentation and some great video tutorials in our quick start. So these are simple examples for Rhino, Revit, working with layouts. And then if you like a text documentation, we have some text documentation. This is relatively slim for the scope of Ellipse, but everything you need to get started is definitely in here, including links to some example models and scripts. Okay, so if you've not signed up for Ellipse yet, you can just go to Ellipse, www.ellipse.studio, and click sign up. If you're a TT employee, you can simply go right to sign in and use your TT credentials. That's all been set up for you. So with that, we're going to take a look at a couple notebook examples and show off a few features of Ellipse. And I'll share the links with these so that you guys can also take a look on your own. So the first one.
Do people need just a minute to sign up for Ellipse, or have you guys already signed up?
I just signed up. It just took 15 seconds or so.
Great.
And it's the last thing that you said though. I was signing up.
Yeah, maybe just give them like 10 more seconds.
Sure. Yeah, when you first sign into Ellipse, I'll kind of do a soft start here. You have all your notebooks. You can also look at a list view to see when they were created, check who you're sharing them with. We look at you can rename, modify who you're sharing them with, and I'll just pull up my first example here. We've got a public share button in the top right. And link to this first notebook in there. Okay, so whoops. Okay. So our mapping functionality is kind of one of the newest features we're integrating into Ellipse. So it's had the least testing. But here's an example. If, say, you're trying to do a master planning project, you want to look at some context information, some census info, you can upload your GIS data to Ellipse. Here, I can click on different attributes, and using our attribute widget, it will kind of tell me all the attributes associated with that particular piece of geometry, whether it's in a 2D viewer or a map or whatever is selected, becomes a globally recognized selection element. So here, I also can see those attributes in the panels tab. If I collapse my side panel, I can have a much cleaner view here. And then for each kind of type of attribute a piece of geometry has, we can, here we're coloring everything by population. We could switch that maybe to gross rent. But we can also label things. So if I wanted to label by, I can click that element in my attributes widget and say label by, and now we get labels on all the attributes for that specific component. In the side panel, we keep track of what we're coloring by gross rent. We have one item selected, and we're labeling by population. You can clear those labels here, or clear the color by over here. And that didn't seem to, maybe because this data set's big, it didn't clear. And then we see a little chart here. Say you've kind of got oriented, you have your context information that you've been mapping, and now it's a question of setting up a context model. And you're having a kickoff meeting, you want to just take a look at the context and be able to discuss that with the team. Here on the next page, I have a simple upload of OpenStreetMap data. This one takes a second. It's a little bit big, mainly because of the textured mesh. But here we have just some basic info from OpenStreetMap. If I select, say, the Museum of Natural History, I can see OpenStreetMap has a ton of data for the Museum of Natural History. And if I go to edit mode, we can take a look at some of those. Oh, I don't want my mesh highlighted for this. If we go to edit mode and I select the 3D viewer, I can control some of the view settings, like do we have a ground plane? What elevation is the ground plane at? We can turn the sky on and off. And also adjust, do a quick sun study, adjust the azimuth, altitude. You would have to know some of the numbers of this for your part of the world to make it accurate. But this is a good example of viewer settings. Here we have a filter. And so the settings for like a filter widget would be all the columns in our data set. And so here we'd be filtering by the building column, which has the OpenStreetMap building type. So if we don't want to see the apartments, we could hide the apartments. And then maybe moving into design here, we decided we want to redevelop Central Park and add a bunch of random buildings. you can have the maps and the 3D model linked so that you've got a bit of responsiveness between the two. So if I say select this one house in the map, I could zoom to that house in the model. And similarly, like if I want to just see where my 2-bedroom apartments are, I click that in the graph, it will select all the 2-bedroom apartments. And I could isolate those. And so now I'm just looking at 2-bedroom apartments in our master plan. I can release that isolation. The last thing I'll note here is just that it works with pretty jagged data. Here we have a master plan mixed with OpenStreetMap data, and so they don't all have the same columns and attributes. So anything that doesn't have in this case, module type attribute is not getting shown. All the OSM data, that's something from the master plan, so it just gets ghosted out. Okay. The next example that I'm going to share is a Revit example. So here's a link to that in the chat. And we've got two pages here. We've got a drawing view and a model view. I'll start with the model. And so in this model, I've got 1,042 members. I'm currently looking at them colored by their length. I have filtered out a few floors here because the floors don't have a length variable in this data set. So I just want to hide those. You can control what is viewed also through layers. So let's say I don't want to use this filter. Again, we can see the floors getting hidden here in the layer drop down. We can search our data set. So let's say we just want to look at columns or beams, or what's another, maybe just things that are structural, which is the majority of this model. And our color by legend it's a little bit responsive there too. So if we want to just look at beams of a certain length, we could clamp that down to the lengths we're interested in. Or maybe we're like, oh, nothing should be so short as 1.2. I think this model is in meters. You'd be able to track those down. Okay, something that's really nice, in addition to just collapsing the panel to have a big viewing mode, is that you can go full screen with your dashboard. And you can also go full screen with a single viewer. So if you want to just take a deeper dive into part of your page, you can enter full screen there. And if we switch to the drawing page, we can see that our model and our drawing are linked together. So this is an analytical model, so it's importing all the colors from Revit for the analytical model. This is not being set by Ellipse right now. And that's something to note, that you can set textures and colors and stuff outside of Ellipse for your base view. If we switch to something that's not colored, like a floor plan, this can be now colored by category. And say you wanted to, you don't want the grid to be selected, or you don't want to see the grid, we could come in here and track down the grids and hide them or lock them. Well, not both. If we lock them and not hide them, then they can't be selected now, and they're not going to interfere with our selection process. Let's say I want to see this specific column in the model. I have it selected here, and then I can zoom to that column in the model. And then I want to get back out, I can do zoom extends to see the full model again. Okay, so I'll leave those examples there and pass it off to Sophie to share a couple more.
Yeah. Okay. You can see my screen. Nice.
Yep.
So let's start. Let me share this with you guys.
Where are the share links going? Are those okay?
Yeah.
Did Nico share any links as well?
Yes, those are all. Oh, you know what? No, I didn't.
yeah.
I sent them to one person. I'll fix that.
Thanks.
Okay. So this is just a building with a bunch of different facade types. Because I used to work as a facade engineer, we had to make a bunch of these similar kind of design narratives. So this is just trying to like mimic a typical basis of design. And right now I'm just looking at just the different facade types and where they're located. And then on the right side, summing or just tracking the amount of area by facade in a donut chart, and then also a bar chart. And they're just interactive. So if I click on the facade type 6 in the bar chart, it then highlights in the donut and in the 3D viewer. We can also so if you're looking at categorical data like we are now, your legend will look like swatches instead of the slider that Nico was showing before. And so if we're unhappy with some of these colors that are predefined by the gradient that we have selected, we can go in here and click on this and change this color to whatever we would prefer it to be. I'm going to switch over to this next page.
So is that UI kind of, if you're in viewer mode, it's a temporary override, and if you're in editing mode, then it becomes permanent?
Yes, yeah, you got it. So if I say, so I would have to, in that last page that I was in, press this save button. And then once I saved it, it would be saved for everybody that I shared the link with. Okay, so next thing that I kind of want to highlight are the scorecard widgets that we have. So you can just choose any attribute that you have and display, say, like the range of widths, the average widths, height, minimum, maximum. We can see the number of unique panels right here. And then we can also open up the scorecard to really just customize it completely to how we want. So I could say I want the inclination and then say the sum of all the inclinations. I mean, that one doesn't make sense, but we could say we want just the max inclination or any of these. And then down here is just a line chart just to show kind of like the distributions of areas they're looking at. And then again, we're coloring. And we can really narrow in like Nico showed before. Is there a way to, oh yeah, hide the panel, hide floating meeting control. The next one we will be going to, or actually I can just go back here. Let's look at a quick structural demo. And I'll share this link with you guys again. Oh no, now I need to unhide those meeting control panels. Where's that? Or can somebody else throw it in the chat? Okay. Okay, so this is just a little like parametric bridge example that I made up in Karamba. And it's like changing the arch height and the arch position, and then taking screenshots and of each bridge iteration and mapping them with the associated data, such as like the mass, the maximum utilizations, and so far. So right now, this is just showing all of my iterations and their weight. And the nice thing that we can do is we can pair this image grid with a parallel coordinates chart to really narrow in on like which design option we want to go with. So say we want to only look at max utilization like below 90, we can really quickly like select all of those and then say, okay, and now we only want ones with a displacement less than 8. And then, so now we're double filtering to only see those. And we can also see those selected in the image grid. Similarly too, in our scatter plot, the selection filters from the parallel coordinates grid is also now showing in our scatter plot, and we can then add like say a third filtering by just doing this, and now we've only are selecting these design iterations. We can move these around, we can change the size of our selection field, and so forth. Then we can really just narrow in on a single option. So we can just look at one of those bridge iterations. Right now it is colored by the type, but we can say we only want to look at arches. We can use this drop down filter to really quickly just see only certain elements. If we want to see, say, the size of every member, we can go in and label by those sizes and quickly see those. This is a filter counter here on the right. So it's showing us the number of elements that are visible. So once we start kind of filtering things out, it tells us how many elements we have left that match those parameters. So the next thing that we're going to do is look at some Revit. If you go to downloads by hovering over the E here, you will find the sample Revit file that we'll be working with, and also the installer for our Revit exporter. It doesn't take too long to install. So if you guys want to do that, you can do it now. You have to have Revit closed before you add the Ellipse exporter though. So you want to download that and then install and go through the steps. I already have it installed, so I'm not gonna install it. But do you guys have Revit? Do you want to follow along, or should I just show you? Either way, I know a lot of people don't have Revit.
Yeah, my IT department locks down what we can install without their assistance, so I wouldn't be able to follow along.
Okay, that's fine. That's what we were expecting. Okay, so if you could install Revit and the Revit exporter. We're gonna just work with a really the basic house in Revit. We have different sheets, plans, don't want to save.
We're still looking at your Google. Maybe you shared just the one.
Let me stop sharing. Cool. Okay, so we're just gonna work, or I'm working with a really simple Revit house. It has a 3D model and a couple of sections and plans. And what we can do is, if you had the installer exported, you'd get a little tab up here called Core Apps, and you press this Ellipse button. And basically what we're going to do is just send all of our Revit model data to Ellipse. I think this is just taking a little bit longer because I'm on Zoom. While this is loading, since, oh, there we go. You guys don't have, if you're not doing this Revit exporting yourself, you can also go into the Google Drive under the Revit, in the Revit folder, and then just download the sample output files there, and those will be the ones that we'll be working with. So it's the part 1, exporting from Revit, and then just these output files you can download. And that'll give you, those are the same files that I'll be working with. Okay, so the first step in doing a Revit export is you can either export your data to an existing notebook that you have. So Ellipse will first prompt you to log into your account, and I'm already logged in, so it knows what notebooks I have, but I'm gonna just create a new one. I'm gonna call it AECtech Revit workshop demo. Create that. And then I'm prompted to select which models I want to send to Ellipse. I just want the 3D one. And then for sheets, I want plans, sections, and elevations. If I want to save these selections, I can press this save button here, so I can load them again for, say, another project. Very similar to what AutoCAD does with their like sheet saving. And then over here is this filter attributes button. Basically, if this is toggled to off, you're gonna get every single attribute from Revit, which I don't recommend doing because there's a lot of them. So by having this toggle on, you'll be prompted in the next screen after this processes to select exactly which elements you want to see, or like which attributes you want to see in Ellipse. So that'll come up in about a second.
For those, technically interested, what Ellipse does is it is looking at every model and view and sheet that you've selected and looking at every single element in those views and extracting all of their attributes. And then this next screen lets you filter down based on what was in those views. So if you have a really simple view, this list is going to be a little bit smaller. And if you're doing a ton of sheets and layouts, it's going to be a lot bigger. And every sheet, it all gets dumped into one single data set. It's not like each 3D model and each view is getting its own data set here.
Okay, so next we have the attributes.
Sophie, which were the models again?
I just did the 3D one.
Okay. So there was
Um,
only one model to
Yes.
select there. Okay.
But you guys can choose other ones if you want, or like other sheets, because I think those are all valid sheets in there. So I don't want all of the attributes, so I'm gonna toggle that off. And then I can either look at every single attribute in a list, or I can look at them individually by their category. I can also search. So I know I want height and I want volume. And let's do area. And then similarly, if you have a saved selection, you can also apply that. And then let's continue. So once that's been uploaded, and then it automatically takes me to that notebook that I created. And we can see in this panel that we have one data set applied, and we have one model, and we have the 3 drawings that I selected. So if we want to look at that data, I'm going to throw a 3D viewer on there, a 2D viewer, and let's show the data table. So as you can see now, everything that we were looking at in Revit, we have now in Ellipse with all of the different attributes. I can color this by area or anything I want. And if I want to look at other drawings, I can drop this down and check all of those out. So if you guys were not able, I guess most of you didn't open Revit and do this exporting. So if you did want to have these files, all you guys would have to do is go to make a new notebook and go to the assets tab, and you would upload, and then all of those files in that output examples folder, you could just place in here and you'd have the same result.
All right. That was a pretty whirlwind introduction to Ellipse and the rapid fire export from Revit. We can take a little break here before getting started in Grasshopper. And we can take this time to also answer any questions. We covered a lot of stuff there. We're about to get you guys a little more hands-on, but if you want to sacrifice your break time to ask anything, we're here. So you can open the table. For those who take a break, yeah, as Sophie just put on there, 3:15, we'll kickstart with Grasshopper. So if you want to follow along, please try to use the break time to make sure you download the Google Drive folder and get some of that content queued up.
I have a question. What's next? This is awesome. The alpha on its own is so exciting. Like, what's the threshold for considering this like beta, or like what things are you hoping to have completed before release?
Yeah, well, I think we're getting very close to beta status. We have a lot of core functionality in place that allows us to start replacing some of our other apps that a lot of engineers use around here, like Thread and Mirar. So we're getting close to the end of alpha. The near-term development items and functionality include refining the map a bit, refining our data viz. Right now, some of the filtering is not, a lot of our graphs and charts right now let you do bulk selections. So grab everything in this pie, but they won't filter and hide things. And so allowing for at a widget level, a bit more control is one of the big next steps. So that you can say, I want this graph to select, or I want it to filter. Being able to set multiple data sets per page and set like specific data sets per widget. It's also on the timeline. And then, we've done a lot of development. There's a lot here, but we don't have a bunch of active users. And every time we do, a couple weeks of testing, there are a lot of things that come up that could be more intuitive and refined. And so there's a whole host of things kind of in that arena that we're trying to improve and make it a little more streamlined. We also want to build more exporters. So the creation of data is easier. Today we're showing Grasshopper examples, and you really have to be, decent in Grasshopper to generate this kind of data. And we want to put a little bit of infrastructure in place so that it can be really easy for anyone to start adding data to their Rhino files and just submit the Rhino file on its own, not need to do like multiple file uploads to get everything in there. So that's a small taste. So if you have anything else you want to throw out there.
Like adding an exporter for eTabs, adding an exporter for Tekla. So obviously you can with an API get that data into Grasshopper and manipulate it. But right now you can't directly do an Ellipse to Tekla connection.
Yeah, long term. So more interoperability is big for us. Also long term is being able to specify external data sets. So maybe you have a Google Sheet you want imported, or a Airtable connection. That we haven't done any development towards that route, but that's something that we're interested in expanding, especially for more enterprise users and firms. That can be really helpful. And then also integration with, right now we're all about data viewing, but it could also create data and interact with other APIs like Shapediver. So being able to run parametric models and have this be an interface to access some of those is something that we'd like to explore in the coming year.
I know how API focused, like, are you guys imagining that it would be akin to something like Grasshopper, where there would be a lot of custom functionality developed by third parties and LinkedIn's? Like, is that a goal or a vision or like something, or is it more a kind of product that you see being more internally developed, and maybe there's some APIs to endpoints to call, but it's less customizable or hackable than that?
Yeah. We've not talked about opening it up for external contributors. We have some pretty good infrastructure to be able to create new widgets fairly easily and have that be modular in a way where it's easy for us to add a new team member to the development team, but it's not so streamlined that we would open it up to external developers. I think there's a lot of challenges for that. This definitely is not a open source code base, and I don't think that is on the roadmap. But we are very interested in, engaging with the wider industry and getting feedback and being really responsive to the stuff we hear. So, if you guys come out of this today and be like, this one single feature is the only thing keeping us from using this on a project, we definitely want to hear that, because it's a good chance we're already thinking about it and that might be enough to put us over the edge to spend some time and get that in there.
I mean, just from what you've shown so far, my mind is blown, right? This is incredible. For the last year or so, I've been working on an internal research project to sort of brainstorm something like this and scope it out and figure out if it's something that's feasible to develop, a design communication tool that, you know, can be a Power BI for architecture, basically. And finding different ways to hook that into existing business lines. We do like historic structure reports, that was one, right? Like urban planning, and just seeing like, you know, tick, 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 like it could check those boxes. It's really, really impressive. So great work to you guys.
Thanks. Yeah, we're excited about it, and we're, you know, in terms of like specific use cases and external integrations beyond our team, we are actively discussing how we could manage like a enterprise subscription system. So if you want to subscribe to Ellipse for your whole firm, you know, that might mean we're more willing to work closely with you to make sure it fully integrates with your SSO, and you guys have secure access to some databases that maybe are not the traditional uploader, stuff like that. So we know it's really hard for a firm to commit to platforms, and that often platforms fall a little bit short in integration, and being really developer focused team, finding ways to work through that with end users is something that we're very interested in.
Mm-hmm. What would be an ideal, not pilot, but like partner firm size or something like are you guys going for a 2,000 person firm ideally, or would you be interested in working, you know, BBB is 180 people, of whom I could see maybe, you know, 30 to 40 being active users in a platform like this? Like, would that be?
That's a question above my pay grade, you know, and we're not, the alpha stamp is still on there. We're not quite there yet. So those are things we'll be thinking about in the next, you know, quarter or two.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Almost 3:15. So I'll start getting ready to queue up, and can we jockey the power supply? Thanks.
Have you also thought about the connection with the speckle?
I don't know if they caught the question.
I was wondering if anybody heard it.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Connection with
The
speckle.
speaker was just doing a little cycling. Sorry.
Okay. I was asking if you have thought about the connection to speckle.
We have not dug into that, but I do believe there are a few speckle workshops going on either today or next week. So we do have some team members engaging with that. I've not used speckle very much. I know it's been developing really quite significantly, and it has a lot of you know, the platform is a kind of twisty mirror of Ellipse in some ways. It does a lot more on the data exchange side, but is an online repository. And so that's the kind of like external connection for data that would make a lot of sense for us to add. So,
Yep.
you know, I mentioned Google Sheets and stuff. But more practically, something like Speckle is probably a better candidate. And also, what are some of the other model hosting sites? Things like BIM 360 and stuff would be the kinds of things we'll be looking into.
Yeah, because we, I mean, all of the data that you would be uploading to Ellipse, like we pass through Speckle, like all of the building data we use for our projects, most of it passes through Speckle. So then, yeah, for us it would just be another button click to send it to Ellipse, and
yeah, and that's, you know, an open API and stuff, something that would be pretty approachable for us as developers. So certainly something that we'll want to look at.
Yep, cool.
Okay, so we're going to jump into some Grasshopper exporting. What do I have to say about this before we get started? Okay, so before we jump into an example script, Twisty Tower, which I showed the notebook briefly earlier, right here, I believe, this tower is what the script we're sharing. I just want to take a look at the basics of exporting data from Grasshopper to Ellipse. So this is a standard export to Ellipse from Grasshopper, and this is actually an example. It's available in the downloads page, and it's walked through on some of our Gitbook, one of our Gitbook videos. So you can dig deeper into this on your own if you want. But there are three basic components. You've got some geometry, and that can be 2D or 3D or GIS. And you've got attributes, your attribute table. That's the keys or all the columns in your attribute table. The values are the rows in that table. And then we have the Ellipse ID. And the Ellipse ID is what we use to link a piece of geometry with its given row in the attribute table and across all the viewers. So a line for a column in a 2D viewer is going to have the same Ellipse ID assigned to it as the column 3D model that 2D cut came from. And that Ellipse ID is one entry in the attribute table. So we could have maybe all the different walls of a floor plate have one Ellipse ID, and all those walls are really just looking to one row in the attribute table, which is all the details for that floor. So the important part of the Ellipse ID is that it's one ID per row in the attributes, but you could have many pieces of geometry share that ID. And so when we're in Grasshopper, the way we put this together is we have some geometry here. We get the count, how much geometry do we have, and we create IDs. We create one ID for every piece of geometry, and we start building our attributes. And we use the TT toolbox create attributes component for this. And so we want to assign the Ellipse ID to the geometry's name. And we'll take a look at what that looks like in Rhino, but that's the important part. That's what links this geometry then to our saved attributes. Now, this is a kind of traditional Rhino attributes. It's got name, you can't see it, but there's layer there. What's this group? and then the keys and values, so the columns and rows. This is getting passed to another style line weight attribute component. So in this case, we're looking at a 2D drawing, an SVG. And so we're taking all the keys and values from the attribute tab, and then we're applying some styling to it. So in this case, all the components are getting the same style, same color and stroke, but you know, in the example we're about to look at, we have different style attributes per different kinds of lines. And then we do the save drawing. And so we've got a save drawing, save model, and save attributes components. They all look the same. They basically, you know, take the geometry, take the attributes, the folder you want to save things to, the name you want the save to have, and then a save button or toggle. So these are the key parts. You got to have your geometry, use that to generate your ellipse IDs. You could also have your attributes and use that to create your ellipse IDs and then apply to the geometry. Either way, the ellipse ID has to find its way into the name of the geometry, and it has to become a row in your data set. So that was just looking at saving the SVG. And here we're also saving a GeoJSON. So here we've got the ellipse ID, but we also have a bunch of other attributes we're interested in. What layer is it on? What's its area, height, material, system? I don't know what system is in this example, but let's say it's, you know, construction system. So here, again, we're constructing the attributes, and then we're saving that to a JSON. So this one is just attributes. There's no geometry when we're saving the JSON. In this case, the save component applies the attributes that we've designated to the geometry. And we don't need to feed the keys and values and actually embed the keys and values into the SVG. We just need the name embedded, because Ellipse will use the JSON to read all the data. And that way we can have, you know, 10 drawings and 5 models, and they all will point to one data set that links them all together. And it's kind of the master source of information. So what's really important is that, you know, you manage all these attributes getting merged together to make a clean list of values, and that Ellipse ID is present as one of those keys, and that every piece of geometry has an Ellipse ID stored, matching stored in the attributes. If a given Ellipse ID for a piece of geometry isn't in the data set, Ellipse will just show it as not having attributes. It will show you what the ID is, and you might go back to your script and search it, but there won't be any data there. Okay, so now I'm gonna hop into Grasshopper and we can take a closer look at this. I'm using this twisty tower example. Here's the script. Grasshopper, you don't need a Rhino file. You can just open an empty Rhino file. And then if you have any issues with this, the stuff that we're exporting is available here. So we're going to create a 3D model, a data set, and a drawing. And here are 2 options that we'll upload. Okay. So when you open this script, and if I just turn everything off and hide everything, we can walk through this one at a time. So,
and I think probably most people don't have TT Toolbox installed, so you should just get the package manager popping up for you and just press install under TT Toolbox if you don't have it.
yeah, that should prompt you when you open the script. You can also type in package manager in Rhino and search for it. And today we're using both Calibri and TT Toolbox.
Yeah, so you should probably go ahead and also download Calibri too while you're here.
Is there any importance to the unit system that you're using in Rhino, feet or inches or anything?
Not for today, not for us, but it just, it just means Grasshopper always uses the units of Rhino. So in this case, we're using a tower and we're talking about radiuses of the tower in, let's see what kind of numbers we have in here. Offset 1.5, core size 8. It's pretty small if that's feet. So
Meters
and
maybe?
this is all fake, so it doesn't matter at all for us today. But just keep in mind, anytime you see a number like this in Grasshopper and you're using it for any kind of dimension, it's using whatever dimensions Rhino looks like. So if you run it in meters and I run it in feet, they're proportionally going to look exactly the same. But one will be much bigger than the other.
The data that's exported, is that exported with units attached or?
That's so 3JS has units. We don't talk about units very much in Ellipse because in the viewers, we're always basically just scaling to the content you have. And maybe that will cause problems if you have infinitesimally small or really big stuff. But generally, we're just trying to preview things to you. You can't edit it. And if you want to measure something, the idea is that that is embedded in your attributes. So your lengths and stuff are hard coded into your data table. So it's on you. Now, if you upload a model in meters and another model in feet, let's see, you wouldn't really know the difference in the viewers. It would be very hard to tell the scalar difference. Because we don't have a way to put multiple models into one scene at the moment. We have some functionality for that on the back end. That's something you'll probably be able to do in the future. And that's when we may start thinking about units more, when you need to put multiple things on top of each other.
So you're not dynamically measuring anything in the cloud to produce attributes. It's coming from the table. Does the attributes table itself have data types and units attached to it? Like if it.
Yeah, we intuit whether the variables are string or numbers or dates, stuff like that. But it's on the creator of the data, I guess, to really embed that information through the attribute names and the values and through the Grasshopper script. We're really just showing you what you've uploaded. We're not doing a lot of interpolation of the content, beyond summations and filtering.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with the question in terms of like summarization of data. Like if I were to upload some data in square meters and some in square feet and some in linear feet, would it understand that I couldn't add, like that a linear dimension can't be added to a square quantity or something like that? Or
I think right now most of our summation functionality is not sophisticated enough where that becomes a concern. We're certainly not, and if we do, we just tell you we multiplied your linear feet by square meters. So what's your result? Probably not very useful. but I think the platform kind of says that's on you because you're trying to multiply things that aren't meaningful. So yeah, there's very limited consideration from that on the Ellipse side, and it'd be important that you synchronize that kind of data depending on the situation. That's probably something we'll have to think about in the future more as we expand that functionality. Okay, so let's jump into this Grasshopper script. The top row has two parts. First, we're creating our geometry, and then we're extracting some attributes from that geometry. So let's take a look at the end result of the geometry in the viewer. If I preview this, you can see my tower now. So that's any of these final pieces of geometry. I'm looking at floor volume, but you can also see the edge of the floor, the plates. And we have some controls for this tower over here. There's the base size, so how wide is it at the base, skinny, how many sides does it have, and how many floors, floor to floor height, classic twisty tower kind of variables. And then we have some text input, which is the programming. So the programming at the base, which will be the first 4 floors, the programming at the top, which will be the last 4 floors. And then whatever you put in the middle is just gonna repeat. So we generate our tower. I'm gonna make mine a little shorter so it fits easier in the viewer. And this is really, some pretty simple operations, offsetting math, shifting the list of points, a nice fun formula from Dave Manns to help vary the widths of each side of the floor plate. And then we have geometry. So this is like the basics. This is what we're eventually going to export, is our floor plate volumes. But we want to get a kind of range of details for each floor plate. So we pass just the floor plates without their walls into this attribute analysis. And you're also seeing these 3 items, our programming is getting fed over there as well. Okay, so we're grabbing the area. We're looking at the center point and the elevation, the Z value for each floor. And then there's a little bit of duplication magic happening for the programming. The output here is our program, but because the number of floors in our building is dynamic and we don't want to have to manually write every floor, what we do is we get the total number of floors and we subtract from that the bottom and top programs, and whatever remaining number of floors we have, we repeat our list. We repeat our middle floors to create the final list. So here we see we've got 27 programming attributes, and if we hover here, we see we've got the same, well, it's indexed to 27, but starts at 0, so it's 28 total. And we see here we've got our 28 floor plates. So all these attributes, we've got 28 floor plates, we've got 28 areas, we've got 28 elevation values. And so you got to flex your Grasshopper data tree skills a little bit to always make sure that you're generating the right information for each. And if we we come here and modify and say we need mechanical space. It's like a research building and we need mechanical like way more frequently. We can see how that's now just getting repeated in the middle. Office, office, mechanical, office, office, mechanical. Okay, so we've got our geometry and all our attributes. The next level here is the attribute kind of correlation. So let's hide this all. I'll show you this preview. Here we're starting to compile the attributes for export. So we have those 4 things that we calculated up above. We also have some new stuff like what's our material color going to be? What do we want to call the layers? We're generating our ellipse IDs. So we check how many pieces of geometry we have. We have 28. So we generate an ellipse ID. And we assign that ellipse ID to the name. We also add it down here to the bottom. You see number 6, that big long unique identifier. That's right, coming in here, T7. So this is our attribute table. So every floor has these 7 attributes: its area, what floor it's on, the floor elevation, its program, its ellipse ID, and its layer. I think, yeah, ellipse ID layer. So here we're manually writing the names for those 7, and we're using the merge to make sure that we get all those in exactly that order for every item. And then we use the TT Toolbox attribute component. So this in TT Toolbox, under document, there's construct attributes, and that's the component that we're using. So we're also adding, similar to the example we looked at in Google Slides, we're adding some material information to our geometry as well. Basically just this one color is getting applied as the diffuse material for all our geometry. And if you want, you can bake your tower at this point. And when you bake it and put it into Rhino, if you select one of these items, you can see our attributes have been written to that item. But this is not what, I mean, this is the same data that Ellipse is going to look at, but it's not reading it from the Rhino file. It's actually reading it from a JSON file. The thing that really matters here is if we go to the details of this object, its name is now the ellipse ID. And when you upload a file, what we dig into your Rhino file and look for is each object's name. And we use that in our libraries and viewers to link your model with our with your data set. So this is the important thing to write when you export any kind of geometry or drawing, that the ellipse ID is tied to that object's name value. Okay, so here we go, little preview of what we're about to export, and we've got our attributes. This is just the geometry and the attributes. Actually, this is the attributes for the Rhino model and the attributes for the JSON. All right.
With the name field, that's true of SVG as well, or curves, or any kind of object you want to show?
Yeah, exactly. And we'll take a look at that right here in this third level, this third tier of the script. So we have this big cluster that generates let's preview it somewhere. Let's preview that generates a bunch of floor plates with a little more detail. So some of the variables for this are like our grid spacing, the core size, the offset, the mullion size, how far apart each floor is. Ooh, getting pretty close there. And this is what we're going to write to our SVG. We have all these different kinds of geometry. So if I look, we've got all our edge, our little details. We've got our horizontal mullions. We've got our glazing. We've got the grid and our, I don't see any columns there. Oh, this isn't columns. This is our attributes. So we have all these different line layers, and we actually want each of these to be displayed a little bit differently. Like we want a really nice fine line weight for some of our small geometry, but say the outer perimeter of our floor plate wants a thicker line weight. What we do is we take our attributes from above. We created all these attributes. They all have an ellipse ID. And we're going to create a copy of those attributes with the line weight material that we want specific to that line type. So here we have all our lines. They're merged together, so we have a perfect, clean, comprehensive drawing. We're going to have a drawing with 806 polyline curves and lines in it. But we only had 20 floors. We only have attributes for 20 floors. We want each individual floor plate to share, even though this floor plate has, 12 different kinds of geometry on it, we want them all to share that same one row of data. We want to know the floor area for that, the program. All those mullions, they share just the program attributes that are the same as that floor. So we're duplicating that information for the length of, that type. So in this case, we've got 1,700 of these small pieces of geometry. We're creating 1,700 instances of this, smaller line weight setting, and copying our original attributes per floor and merging that together. So now when we write our SVG, we've got our RAM viewer, all our lines, almost 2,000 lines, and the exact same number of attributes. So they all have ellipse IDs and everything. And so like everything on this floor plate is going to share an ellipse ID. It's thought of as one group. It relates to one row in the data set. And so that's what this is all about. It's mainly about copying the original attributes for the floor plate and assigning the specific line weights per, which part of our floor drawing. But it's just going to be one big drawing. We're not doing one drawing per floor. Okay, so again, the basic inputs, we got geometry, we got attributes. So the final step here is to save the files, to write our files. And in TT Toolbox, these are under the Files tab, export 3DM, export SVG, and then we also have save attributes is this last one. I'll put these on so you can see the full file name, the full input names. Okay. So when you want to run this, everything has a save button at the bottom, and we trigger that here. But you guys got to set up where you want to save this. We have a little script that will grab your relative path and create a Ellipse workshop exports folder. So if you want to use that folder and you've saved this grasshopper file in a safe place, you can check, you know, where that is. You can just replace the red, use your own file path with this relative path. Otherwise, you'll need to replace this with, you know, whatever location you want to save your data to. So once you set up the save directory, you can press save. There's 3 files we're creating here. The first is the SVG drawing. You can see that's just taking the outputs of this last row. It's all our lines and all their attributes. It's the directory, the folder that we want to save it in, the name we want to give to that file, and we press the button when we're ready. For the 3DM, we've got the 28 floors, you know, as these volumes. We've got the 28 pieces of data, the 28 attributes, and then the same directory, file name, version of Rhino we want to save it to. So our 3DM exporter can save to multiple versions of Rhino. We're using Rhino 7. I'm not sure if it matters for Ellipse. I have a feeling Ellipse will be happy with multiple types, but it's probably a little less compatible with older Rhinos. So I have a feeling the schema hasn't changed even from Rhino 5. I've never tested a different version of Rhino, so I'd say just save to Rhino 7, because this is just creating a Rhino file. And then the last one is our attributes. So there's no geometry here. It's just the attributes, those 28, one per floor. And this is going to save as a JSON. If you see this option format, you can right click that. You can also save as a CSV. Ellipse always works off of JSONs, but you can upload CSVs. If you upload a CSV, it's going to process that CSV and generate a JSON version and store both of those in the notebook for you. Okay, so I'm ready to go. I'm gonna click, maybe I'll make this, give this a higher number because I've saved this a few times before.
The JSON structure is fairly flat, would you say? It's like just a single.
Yeah, it is. And I'll open each of these so we can take a look right here. All right, so 04, you can see the stuff that I've exported. Let me open this with VS Code. So the JSON is just an array where each object represents one set of attributes. And you can see, you know, it's very human readable. You know, if your screen is not so small. And in there, the key thing is the Ellipse ID that links stuff up, and that's actually in the name as well. If we take a look at the SVG, which is just a kind of vector file format, if you're not familiar, it's readable by PDF and Illustrator. You can export stuff from Illustrator to SVG very easily. And it's a kind of markup text where it describes your geometry type. It can have an ID embedded, which is what we're looking up, you know, to identify what piece of geometry is what. And then you can actually store, you know, more attributes. Here's the data layer, and then it's a string of all the coordinates for a line or a curve. So this is just a really adaptable, flexible 2D vector file format that we leverage. And then finally, the Rhino model. And if we just take a look at the Rhino model that got exported, we can see how some of those attributes were carried into it. So if we're ready to, we've got all our files and we're ready to upload, it's the same as Sophie's showed with Revit. You could create a notebook, workshop tower. Open that notebook, it will right away prompt you. If you accidentally close out of this, you can get back to that by going to Edit, Assets, Upload Assets. It's the same interface. And I've run a couple versions of my tower, so I could grab all of these, or I could just do the one that we exported just now. It intuits the file types. If I wanted to maybe upload some V-Ray renders or something along with this, I could add them too. Click upload. I would specify those renders as the type file. And why don't we, and now my data is in there, and so we can start looking at it. I drop some widgets on here, 3D viewer, pie chart, legend, and maybe a filter and a toggle grid. Let's try to give all this a little more space. So I dropped some of these widgets on and they're all blank, only the 3D viewer loaded, and that's because I have to go to their settings. So I select the pie chart widget here, it's highlighted in orange, and I see its settings tab on the left. I click there, and I have to set which attributes are going to go into the pie chart. So I'm going to do program and area, or I could do program and elevation, though that's kind of a weird one. Area is probably the only one that makes sense. And then for the toggle grid, which is a filtering UI element, maybe I want to filter by program. Save. And now I can hide, mechanical every third floor. I want to maybe do a color by. I can do that through the filters tab. The properties tab will show you what you currently have selected. It also has a filter section where you could search, like, where's my lobby? There it is. Or apply color buys. If I color by a category that a chart is using for grouping, like in this case, program, then the chart will adopt that color by as well. So only if it's kind of a compatible field does that occur. And then I can also do that through attributes. So if I select elevation here and click it, I can color by elevation. Now my legend looks bad, it's vertical. I can come and select that, and again in the widget settings I can say I want this to be horizontal. Or maybe I say it's okay that it's vertical, but I need it to sit next to my 3D model. So I give that a little space. We're working on making the layout editing experience a little better. Things like copy and paste and delete keys, I think, are additions I'm really looking forward to being added. But for now, there are some settings that can control the editing experience. So if you don't have any widgets selected, the settings panel here affects how widgets are laid out. So right now, snap to top is on, for example. If I turn that off, I can move things a little more free form. They don't snap back up to the top. If I come back here and put that on, as soon as I move things, they kind of, suck up to the top of the screen. This helps from, losing a widget way down, 20 miles down the scroll wheel. You can also lock the layout, and you can lock specific widgets. So if you don't want them to move, you can lock them. There's a little gray lock on every widget. Okay, so I had that example layout that you've all seen. So this is what you could get with the 2D viewer and adding parallel coordinates and the data table. But in the interest of time, I won't walk through building this entire thing out. But if you guys have any questions on the Grasshopper script or working with the data in Ellipse, maybe we can take, what do you think, 10, 15 minutes to play around as a group to answer any questions, and then we'll move on to the next example.
Okay.
Let's say 10 minutes. So if you guys want to play with the script on your own and ask questions as stuff comes up, see if you break it, or if you're just kind of working through the layout and you're like, I want my layout to look like this, but I don't know what widget, this can be playtime, and we're happy to answer any questions that come up.
Yeah, so I have a question. I was going through the script and uploaded everything. Where do you set the color by? I didn't find it and I got lost at that step.
Yeah, the color by is when you're in widgets, it's a UI component kind of with our filters and search buttons. So that's where that widget lives when you're adding it to the canvas. It's also always available on the filter tab. So right here, and then the last way that you can do color bys is through the attribute components. If you have you want to color by area, you can just left click on area and choose color by, and it will apply that. And that's a global thing. It's not, you can't do it per widget. Not yet, at least.
That makes sense. It's per page, right?
Yeah, it operates on the whole page. If you go to another page, it can be a different.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'll just be playing around here. But as questions come up, feel free to
I like
let us
the
know.
iframe widget. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll show that. Drop a image in as well.
Is there a link to the demo Twisty Towers dashboard?
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that. Which?
The Twisty Tower one? Yes, I can put that in the chat.
Yeah, so you'll share. We do have a embed widget, which will, basically give you an iframe you can drop anything into. So if you need a little link maybe to your, your firm's website or YouTube video or something, that embed widget is a nice one. You just have to drop your iframe code in here.
How is the support for the image or carousel component? Like, is there does the upload sort of uses the same uploader as like the JSON or the models, where it seems like there's maybe like, it's in the tens or dozens rather than the hundreds or something? Is there this sort of use cases aligned for like showing 2 or 3 photos of a condition, or?
Yeah, so if I go to assets and go to upload assets and I browse just to my, pictures folder, and I grab a couple random photos. I'll upload these as files. Like, so I've uploaded that. I say done. I go to, and that'll be listed here. And just before this, I actually uploaded a PNG of the Grasshopper script. Now, if I go to widgets and the image carousel, drop that in here, go to its settings, we have those 3 files listed. And let's see, yeah, that's it. Save.
I think it'll load the first one since it's a GIF. Or, oh, it does.
Oh yeah, look, even the GIF works. So that's the idea there. And if you take your time, it's not something that happens super rapidly. But if you take your time between the rich text editor and adding some images and then, strategically placing your 3D model, you can get pretty solid presentation ready dashboards that combine static information with the upload info. And you can make this full screen too, I think. Do we have that feature yet? Maybe not. Maybe it's not specific to the viewer. But I guess you could use it to take up the whole screen, and then you would basically have a mini slideshow on one of your pages.
It's not reactive though in the same way, right? Like you can't associate an attribute or filter images based on another field, right?
Not in the carousel. We do have an image grid, and that's going to be a big focus of our next Grasshopper script. So you'll get to see that in action. And cool. So they kind of sound similar, but the image grid here is different from the carousel, and the image grid does allow for filtering and navigation in the way that you'd be familiar with from doing other optioneering type computational design. All right, made a nice mess.
Should we take a break?
Yeah, why don't we take another, what do you say?
You can do 10 minutes.
Let's do 10 minutes. We'll come back at 4:15 and we'll jump into the next piece of Grasshopper. And I'm gonna step away for a moment, but I'll be back, and if anyone has questions or wants to chat a little during the break, that's fine. And maybe Sophie.
I'll be here.
Sophie will be here also.
Okay, that's 4:15. We can get started again. So the next part that we will be looking at is part 2, exporting from Grasshopper, and then we're going to be doing this design space exploration. And same format as before, you can open up this Grasshopper file and run through the script to get your data set and images, but if anything doesn't go right for you, you can open up this outputs file and get all of the data that we'll be importing into Ellipse. So I have this file already open. We will be working off that same twisty tower that Nico showed. Just generating the massing, we can change our inputs. And then we're adding on a second step just to make it a little bit more interesting. And we're gonna just be adding a couple of different facade options. And shout out to Dave Mann's Mesh Plus for a couple of these facade options here. Let me turn this off. Oh, but basically in what we're gonna be doing in this part is we're gonna be iterating through a bunch of different tower and facade designs, taking those attributes and then taking screenshots of all of those images so that we can upload them into an image grid on Ellipse. So these are our different options. We're just using some pretty simple meshing tools. And then similarly, like we did before, we're gonna get the attributes of these facade panels. So we're looking at things like the type of panelization, number of panels, number of unique panels, average panel length, max panel length, and the minimum panel length. And then we're going to aggregate all of this information using Calibri to create images and the data set. Let me turn this back on. So this part of the script is just gonna help us preview our geometry. And we can run through different iterations and it'll change that geometry that we see. To get the different iterations, we're using this component of Calibri, which is called Calibri inputs. And how this works is you basically put in all of the sliders that you want to iterate through. So I want to iterate the facade options, the number of sides in the building, and the count, which is like that kind of like wavy feature that you see in the building. And so this will create all of those options. So like say like I want option 1 with all combinations of sides and all combinations of counts. And what that's gonna do, so that's gonna iterate through. And then while it's doing that, I also wanna take a screenshot of what I'm seeing in Rhino. So I'm gonna use this component also in Calibri called the Calibri image settings. And every single time that a different iteration is run in this component, it's going to trigger this image settings to capture whatever it sees in the Rhino viewport. And I've told it to look just at the perspective viewport. And then you can also set the width and height in pixels of the image output that you want. So before you even run anything, you should make sure that your building is nicely centered in the middle of your viewport so that you get a nice clean image every time you run this. Next, we're to record all of the different data attributes for every iteration. Then we're using this Calibri outputs component. And this is just going to record for each iteration all of the different data points that we are interested in looking at. So then finally, we aggregate all of this together into this Calibri aggregator component. And something to note that's actually really important before you run everything is that, so this is in override all mode. So when you run it, what it's going to do, it's going to basically create a CSV file for you of all of your data. And it's also going to create all of your images for you that it's taken screen captures of. But it can either override, which it'll clean whatever folder you've directed it to, it'll delete everything in that folder and then repopulate it. So it's really important, like, to not put it in a, it needs to be in its own folder. Otherwise you might delete an imported file. But if you can change that setting, like you can run all and append to the end. So this would just, in that CSV file that you have, if you already have a couple of data points run, it'll just append more data to the end of that CSV and also just throw more images into that same folder without deleting anything. Similarly too, so this is the same method we used before to get our file path. Right now it's looking at my relative file path, which I think is the downloads folder. And you really wouldn't want to only run this in the downloads folder. So I'm then creating a separate folder in downloads called Ellipse Workshop Exports. And so all of my files are going to be exported to that folder, downloads, and then Ellipse Workshop Exports. So I'm going to put that in there. And then we can start, we can turn the aggregator on, and I'll set that to true. And then if you notice, if I go down to my downloads folder, I've now created this folder Ellipse Workshop Exports, and I have this new CSV file in there. And if I click on this and open it up, right now it's just showing me like the column headers. I'm not gonna add anything, but the inputs and then recording the outputs. So you definitely need to close this before you move on. But so then the next step is to press fly. And once I press fly, it's going to start iterating through all of my options and populating that CSV with values that I just showed. And this component is pretty cool because it waits for every other component that it's connected to, the sliders, to complete their task before it'll move on to the next iteration. So you don't have to worry about setting kind of like a timer between iteration sets to make sure that you're capturing all of your data. It'll just do it automatically for you. So I'm going to press fly. And this will take about a minute, minute and a half to run through all the iterations. And we can see in the Rhino viewport all of the iterations changing, the sliders changing, and the geometry changing. So I'll just let this run for a minute. It won't run if you have the Excel file open. And if you ever want to stop the process, there's this running text file that's being created. And if you delete that, it'll force the Calibri component to stop iterating. we can see a bunch of images being created in our folder. Does anyone have any questions up until now?
That's good.
Yeah. So yeah, this kind of workflow is definitely really good for like environmental analysis. It'd be awesome to run this with a ladybug. But we didn't want to do a whole ladybug tutorial in this. Yeah, we're running. Oh yeah, so also if you zoom in on this component, it'll tell you the total number of iterations that it's gonna have to run through. So for this, it's 48.
That's basically every step for every slider that's being put in here. So we're looking at every count option times every number of sides times every facade option.
And that's finished. Great. Okay, so we look at that folder. I now have 48 lovely images that are also titled with the input settings. And I also have a completed CSV file that's showing me all of my recorded data. If I So the next thing to note is that, so before we were linking data and geometry together with an ellipse ID. Now to link an image with data, what we have to do, or what Ellipse is looking for, is a key called underscore images. And so any property that has this key in it, then it knows, okay, any image with this name, I'm going to link with this data. So we've made this a little bit easier so you don't have to go in and change this manually. Also, these headers will, the exact name of these headers will go into Ellipse as they are now, and they're not super clean with those in-out prefixes. So if we close this, don't save. That's where the step 3 process CSV occurs, and we can toggle that. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, oh, that's already false. Yeah, you should toggle this back to false when you're done. Otherwise, you might, if you like change any of your sliders, you'll keep adding more rows to your CSV file. But okay, we set this toggle to true, and then it gives us this data ellipse file, which has now been processed for us. It's right here. And if we look at it, now our header is the correct one with the underscore images, and we've removed the in and out prefixes from these headers. So let's upload this to Ellipse. I'm gonna go to my dashboard. I'm gonna create a new notebook. AECtech workshop demo. Create. Now I'm gonna draw. Whoops. Okay, so now we have all of our files here. And something that you'll notice is that this CSV file is imported as a file. And then all of our images are categorized as image in this image, which means that they'll be available in our image grid. And then this is a new file that gets created on upload call, and it's a JSON file of all of our data because Ellipse can only read JSON files. So we've taken the liberty of just converting this CSV to a JSON for you. And so then we can upload. Did you upload with the CSV at the same time? If you don't upload them at the same time, it won't recognize your images as images and not files.
Yeah, I just dragged everything at the same time.
Interesting.
So I can see here like all the PNGs and the data.csv and also data csv.json and then all the
Okay.
PNGs.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Is that something anyone else encountered?
You should be able to manually just click it to image.
Yeah, I can do that, but you know, it can
Yeah.
take some time with many pictures.
You might try canceling and before you click the upload button, try doing the drag and drop again. And what it checks for is that underscore column in your data set. It says, is there a data set here? Does it have an images column? If it does, then it's going to start checking your images for inclusion. So obviously it's a bug we should look at, but you might just try to do it more time and see if it seems to click.
No, I tried now again to drag all of them in, and then I also tried to click what is it, upload files or browse files, and then select all of them, and I get the same.
Did
I
you?
mean, it's fine to just click all of them, but I think it would be good that it does work properly.
Maybe I'm wondering, did you use the data file or the data_ellipse file?
I drag all of them.
Okay.
Maybe that's the problem.
That's the problem, because it doesn't know which data set is going to be associated with these images, and it's probably looking at only this data one, which doesn't have the underscore images tag.
Okay.
So I think I'm pretty sure if you just use this one, it should work.
Yeah, I can see how we would miss that not uploading. Like we're always testing. Oh, I have my images in my data. Not I have my images in 4 different kinds of data. So thank you.
So I just dropped the image grid widget on here. Doesn't look so great at the moment, but we can go into the settings and I can change the number of grid divisions so that I can see more of them. That looks good. Another thing we haven't really touched on a lot are tooltips. So if I hover over any of these, I'll see all of these different properties. And maybe I don't want to see all of them, like Ellipse ID is not very useful. So I could toggle that off. Let's just toggle off a couple of random ones. And then if I save this, then you can only see those properties in the tooltip. Let's also add in the parallel coordinates because the image grid and the parallel coordinates work really nicely together. And again, I need to go into the settings and I can choose now which parallel or which attributes I think are like I want to plot against each other. So let's plot first the inputs. So yeah, the order that you click on these are going to be the order that they show up in. So the inputs were count, facade option, and I think number of sides. And then I can then see all the output properties and click those. And last, do we care about anything else? Maybe a scatter plot, those are fun.
On the server and in terms of load time, are the images like downsampled or like is it ideal to upload smaller images or target the image size in any way?
I think in the image viewers, we're not doing any downsampling. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure we don't do any processing of your images. And so it's going to be what you upload is what you get.
Okay.
So when you're just looking at a single image, it's not that big a deal, like in the carousel. But if you're trying to see 800 images in the image grid, using a smaller resolution would be better.
Okay.
And then is it possible to customize the scale for parallel coordinates? No. The scale is pretty much set at, so when you set the size of your widget, that will control kind of like the scale that you see your parallel coordinates plot.
Yeah, and there's not like per column. So if you wanted to modify count to be from 2 to 3 instead of 1 to 4, right now there's no functionality for that. But that is the kind of thing that we might consider in the future. You can select by a portion of the scale though, and does the parallel coordinates doesn't include it, but a lot of the other charts do allow you to modify the scale of labels and grids and some of the orientation of those things. So we're working on making the charting library a little more sophisticated with some of this fine tuning, but it's not in there yet.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
So yeah, this chart has a couple more settings for customization. Changing the radius of our plots. Grids on or off. And let's just view that. Highlighting. Maybe let's add a color by. I think we do have some charts that the histogram has more settings. Yeah. Do some random things here. And change that. Yeah.
So we've got 20 minutes left, shared two not particularly simple scripts, looked at a lot of notebooks, haven't given you a ton of time to play around in Ellipse. So happy to take this time to answer questions, let you explore and come up with questions as you work with the scripts. You know, happy to use the rest of our time however you guys find that most valuable. But this is, I think, the conclusion of the content we've prepared today.
Really cool.
Thanks. It's been fun preparing for this workshop as it got us to spend a little less time writing web code and actually making some notebooks. And we're really getting excited to see this stuff in action. So if you guys end up using Ellipse and doing some fun stuff with it, we'd love, love for you to share. It's early days and we're excited to see how people want to use it and any kind of issues or feature requests you might have as you start your Ellipse journey. Don't hesitate. You could reach us on the AECtech Slack or directly by email. Really looking forward to you guys using the platform.
Are you guys going to be around for the symposium and hackathon next weekend?
We will be there.
Cool.
Do you guys plan to make this tool will we be able to integrate this tool into other like website instead of like having us to direct other viewer to go to the website as a tool?
We've not discussed the idea of putting it under other domains other than that possibly for like when we leave alpha and we enable subscriptions, maybe working with enterprise clients to get some of their own, branding and possibly, their own like kpf.ellipse.studio kind of destination maybe. But beyond that, I don't see further external integration to host the dashboard. We will look maybe to external integration to bring things into Ellipse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Cool. Thank you. Great tool.
Just out of curiosity, what is this built in? Which framework?
This is built on Vue 3.
Okay, nice.
Do you feel like there's a lot more optimization to do on the like model 3D viewer, or are you guys pretty closely mirror? I think you mentioned 3JS before, right? Are you guys pretty much sort of ingesting that project or building custom on top of it?
Yeah, our viewer is 3JS with our own implementation of that. And we, at Thornton Tomasetti, we work on some really massive projects. Our engineers are dealing with huge Revit files, and we really want to get the viewer to a point where it's stable looking at stadiums and airports. We're not quite there yet. As soon as you have like 50,000 components in the model, in a big model, we start to see some performance issues during like filter events. It's pretty smooth just navigating around, but if you're actually trying to like manipulate, recolor, and filter, we haven't quite gotten there. So that's a continual progress, like that's a continual issue for us until we can handle those big airports. And we've tried to build Ellipse in a very flexible way. So if a third-party 3D viewer comes along that really sings with big data, you know, we probably wouldn't hesitate to swap that in to the viewer. So it's got a lot of functionality. It's stable, which is important, but we do feel like there's a little more optimization to be done, especially for the really big models.
Okay. I guess one other technical question. Are you using the Rhino importer in Three.js, or are you doing some behind the scenes conversion to like a GLTB or something like that, or GTLB, whatever it's called?
Yeah, we are using the Rhino importer, part of Three.js, and we have talked about taking a closer look at that and seeing if it's really the most performant option, or if we ought to be making things GLTF and then importing it, or doing other conversions on the other end. We have a range of services that run to process and store our data, and so, you know, we're not too nervous about introducing intermediary steps if we have to digest user uploaded content to get it in a really performant state before showing it back to you. But that's not been an area that we've spent tons of research time, so it's on the roadmap. But right now we're using things that are a little more out of the box.
Anecdotally, we've used the Proving Ground visual, which I think is possibly built on Three.js also, and the difference between like the Rhino viewer and the other one was like, it was like 3x better to use the pre-exported GLTP meshes.
Well, that's a good thing to hear. It's definitely on our radar that will possibly make a big difference. So, you know, who knows, maybe in the next 4 weeks we'll get a chance to look at that.
Cool. Well, thank you again for this workshop. This was awesome. This is really, really great to see.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, having, you know, so many good questions and being interested.
Yeah. And if you're going to be the hackathon or symposium, we will see you guys there.
Oh,
yeah, we'll be around. Come say hi to us.
Cool. All right. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much. This was awesome.
Thank you very much. Oh, wait.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Thank you so much.